Kia ora koutou, welcome back to JDB Selects for the final time in 2025. I will probably do a video next week, obviously, to announce the winners. I also might do some tip videos for the final series, but certainly this is the last round of the tipping comp for this season. Now, before we do get into my tips for round 27, I do want to give our free Discord server a massive plug. As shown on screen, we finally, after 26 weeks, had a lucky 8-bet hit. If you aren't familiar with a lucky 8, that's when you pick 8 legs from each of the 8 games. And congrats to your local drunk who finally took out the lucky 8, earning himself a Selects VIP membership for life. The slip was posted before the start of the first game, so you could have jumped on it too. All you have to do, scan the QR code on screen, hit the link in the video description to join our free server. We're closing in on 2,000 members, and honestly, it's such a fun place to watch footy, have some punts, and have just a genuinely good time. Alright, if we do talk some footy, what a great end of the season. Coming home with 7 out of 8 tips, only getting dicked by my Warriors, who went down to the Eels in heartbreaking fashion. I certainly don't want to touch on the Vaimonga knock-on. I mean, I can probably admit it was a knock-on, but my days, that watching from the stands, you could certainly not see it on the big screen, and I was filthy. Vale, Kyle Vale. And if we take a look at the tipping comp ladder, the top 20 after 26 rounds, Jordan Hill only got 5 out of 8 last week, but still is 4 points clear of the closest competition in first place. So barring any crazy upsets this weekend, I don't want to early crow up, but Jordan Hill is looking likely. Still a bit to play for second and third, number 2 Turbo, and Mike G, one of our Discord members, currently tied on 132 points, with only the margin separating them, so they certainly could be a bit of changing there. So good luck to both of you. Congrats to everyone shown on screen for great years tipping. Let's get into it. Here are my tips and predictions for round 27. Alright, short and sharp this week. Round 27 gets underway on Thursday night with the 4th place Brisbane Broncos looking to take down the 2nd place Melbourne Storm at Suncorp Stadium. Alright, if we do start first with the Broncos, who secured an important 38-30 victory over the North Queensland Cowboys at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, extending their winning streak against the Cowboys to 6 consecutive games and moving themselves into the top 4. It certainly wasn't a clinical performance, but securing that top 4 position could prove to be pivotal. Now, in terms of teams list for the Broncos, Adam Reynolds is still a chance to return this week, while Xavier Willison isn't due back for at least another fortnight. And as for the Storm, they fell heavily at home to the Sydney Roosters, suffering a shocking 10-40 defeat after conceding 7 tries and struggling to stop the Roosters' relentless second half attack. Melbourne was certainly missing several regulars, including Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes and Xavier Coates, and the performance was certainly marked by a lack of cohesion and desire, capping off what was a disappointing night in Craig Bellamy's 600th game at the helm. It was the Storm's worst 40 minutes in club history, I believe, so I am expecting a massive response this week. Some big ends for the Storm are expected as well, with Jack Howarth, Tui Kamikamica and Jerome Hughes all listed to return this week. Harry Grant, however, still has 1 more week to serve on his suspension, and there are talks that Bellamy will rest both Munster and Pappenhausen, so do keep an eye on Teams List Tuesday when they drop later today. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Melbourne, they have won 17 of the past 18 games against the Broncos. They've also won 14 of the last 15 meetings at Suncorp Stadium, and I am going to take the Storm to bounce back here by 1 to 12 points. I might change that tip depending on the news of Pappenhausen and Munster, but certainly having Hughes back on the side is a massive in. The Broncos certainly will want to put a bit of a statement performance on against the Storm going into the finals, but given the trash that Melbourne dished up last week, I think they do bounce back strong, and the Broncos certainly haven't been convincing, even though they put 38 points on the Cowboys. At this stage, give me Melbourne 1 to 12. Alright, moving now to the first of 2 games on your Friday night as per usual, and we do start with the 10th placed Manly Sea Eagles taking on the 6th placed NZ Warriors at 4 Pines Park. Alright, and if we do start with the Sea Eagles, who delivered a commanding attacking display to defeat the St. George Illawarra Dragons 40 points to 24 at Jubilee Stadium, and in the process keeping their mathematical finals hopes alive with a polished team performance. Daly Cherry Evans orchestrated the Sea Eagles' attack with 3 try assists and 6 successful conversions, also crossing for a try himself, while Corey Riddell claimed a double and a clinical showing on that right edge. I'd be really frustrated if I was a Manly fan because they've once again proved just how much potential their roster had this season. And in terms of teams list, bad news for Manly with Tolu Kola suffering that obviously season-ending MCL injury against the Saints, while Taniela Paseka is also a chance to return for the final hit-out of season 2025. And as for the Warriors, unfortunately, they were upset by the Parramatta Eels 26-22 in a dramatic finish over here at Go Media Stadium, surrendering a crucial top 4 opportunity despite dominating possession and staging a spirited second half fight back. Despite dominating all crucial key stats like possession and attacking sets, the Warriors' 11 errors and defensive lapses, plus a long-range try to Josh Adokar and 2 to Isaiah Iyongi, proved costly in a game where the final seeding was at stake. I won't talk about the Dimitri Vaimonga knock-on because I might break down and cry, but let's be honest, he did touch it, unfortunately. Some good news for the Warriors is they did pick up no new injuries against Para, and they aren't expecting any players back, so I would expect a very similar 1-17. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Manly have won 7 of the last 9 meetings between the two clubs at Four Pines Park, but you know what? I'm taking the Warriors here 13+. We need this win. Yes, it's biased. Yes, it's one-eyed. I don't give up. Warriors 13+. Alright, and the final game on Friday night has the 8th place Roosters up against the 13th placed South Sydney Rabbitohs at Allianz Stadium, looking to add another chapter to the book of feuds. And if we do start first with the Roosters, who produced a stunning second half display to defeat the Melbourne Storm 40 points to 10 at Amy Park and a powerful boost to their finals aspirations. The Roosters overcame a 10-0 halftime deficit by scoring 40 unanswered points, with winger Mark Nwanganitawase recording 4 tries to become the season's top try scorer with 20. Pretty impressive when you consider it was Craig Bellamy's 600th game, and I have no doubt that that performance will give the Tricolours a massive confidence boost for their remaining games this season. Great news also for the Roosters, with Sam Walker ready to make his return from concussion this week, giving the Roosters what is pretty much a full-strength side for what feels like, only a handful of times this season. And as for the Bunnies, they had their final bye of the season last week, but the week prior delivered a crushing performance with a comprehensive 40-0 defeat over the St. George Illawarra Dragons at Accor Stadium, completing at 95% with just 2 errors throughout the game. Young Jai Gray was the standout, amassing a mind-blowing 357 run meters as well as scoring a try, and Cody Walker came off the bench in the 25th minute and also played a pivotal role. It was the club's largest ever win against the St. George Illawarra Dragons and moved them safely clear of a potential wooden spoon shootout. Massive news also for South Sydney this week, as they might finally field a strong, experienced side with Jack Whiten, Michaeli Ravalawa, Bailey Bentley-Harpe and potentially Cam Murray, all expected to be available for selection this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Roosters, they have won 5 of the past 7 between the two clubs. The Chooks have also won 4 of the last 5 games at Allianz Stadium. Man, I know the media's going to beat this up all week, that, South's here to spoil the Roosters' party, but let's be honest, I don't see any way the Rabbitohs trouble the Roosters here. Even if they do get some of those key players back, that's certainly a boost, but the Roosters should be far too strong, and there's too much at stake for the Roosters. Give me the Chooks 13+. Alright, moving now to the first of 3 games on Super Saturday as per, and we are starting at WIN Stadium with the 15th placed St. George Illawarra Dragons taking on the 7th placed Penrith Panthers. Alright, and we do start with the Dragons, who were thumped by the Sea Eagles at Jubilee Stadium, 24 points to 40. Manly certainly started fast, and the Dragons responded with some decent moments in that second half, with Laiken King-Tongia and Christian Tuipulotu crossing to narrow the gap to 22-18 before Manly pulled away clear again. GG St. George Illawarra, we will see you next season. And in terms of teams list, Hamish Stewart and Moses Sully are the only players battling injuries for the final game. And as for the Panthers, their New South Wales Cup team faced a heavy defeat, losing 28-4 to the Canterbury Bulldogs at Accor Stadium. The Panthers fielded a largely inexperienced side, choosing to rest 16 frontline players, including all of their stars, which led to the club debuting 5 new players. You certainly can't read anything into that performance when it comes to the finals, but you've got to give some of those young guns a lot of credit. They really did take it to the Dogs in that opening 40 minutes before finally collapsing. There's certainly been a lot of talk also around Penrith resting players, but I fully support it. If you're in that position and you do not care where you finish on the ladder, you have every right to rest players to give yourselves the best chance of winning the premiership. And certainly if a team is going to win it outside of the 8, doing something different like this certainly gives Penrith the best chance at being fit and healthy and making a run. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Panthers, they have won 12 of the last 17 meetings between the two clubs. And I do like Penrith here. I'm going to take Penrith here, 13+. I think Ivan will name a full-strength side to get his side back up and running before they do enter the finals. The Dragons have been valiant all year, but they've certainly given up the ghost the last few weeks, or at least it feels like that to me. Give me Penrith here. Should be pretty straightforward. Moving now to the second of 3 games, and we do move now to the GC with the 17th place Gold Coast Titans looking to fight back against the 11th placed West Tigers. And if we do start first with the Titans, who fought valiantly in a high-scoring Queensland Derby against the Dolphins, but ultimately fell short 36 points to 30 at Suncorp Stadium. The Titans trailed early as the Dolphins dominated the first 30 minutes, but clawed back into contention with key tries from AJ Brimson, Chris Randall, and Jalen de Groot, as well as the veteran Kieran Foran, who scored just before halftime to level the game at 18 all. Certainly, despite the loss, it was a really entertaining game, with defense certainly on the back burner, vintage Titans and vintage Dolphins. Good news too for the Titans, if there is any, is that there were no new injuries, and they have no players expected back this week either. And as for the Tigers, well, they also fought hard, but were also defeated 24-10 by the Canberra Raiders at GIO Stadium. West were pretty solid defensively, but couldn't quite get their attack going, which has certainly been something they've struggled to do without Adam Dewey at halfback. It does though feel like they have turned a corner in terms of belief and sticking in games for that full 80 minutes, and will no doubt be better for the run next season with a few of those key players back from injury and in certain positions. And in terms of teams list, Gerald Skelton suffered that pretty heavy blow when he tried to put a hit on Ethan Strange, which will mean he is unlikely to play this week due to the NRL's concussion protocols. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Titans, they have won 11 of the last 14 games against the Tigers, which is somewhat surprising to me. And both sides have won 3 games apiece at Cbus Super Stadium. And I'm going to take the Titans here by 1 to 12 points. Yes, the Titans. I think there is more to play for in this game for the Gold Coast than there is for Wests. I think the Titans have showed that they can score plenty of points. They just need to defend their line a bit better, which I doubt they'll do this week with 1 game to go. But I do hope they can send both Dares and Foran off with the win, and hopefully try and prevent themselves from winning a spoon. So give me the Gold Coast here, 1 to 12. Alright, and the final game of Super Saturday has the 3rd placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs looking to take down the 5th placed Cronulla Sharks at Accor Stadium. And if we start first with the Doggies, who secured a comfy but clunky 28-4 victory over the Panthers at Accor Stadium, locking in a top 4 finish for the first time since 2012. Canterbury dominated possession with 60% thanks largely in part to Connor Tracy, who racked up 192 run meters, and Jacob Preston, who achieved his first career hat-trick and finished as the Bulldogs' leading top try scorer for the season with 10. I personally still have my doubts about the Dogs' attack with Galvin in that side, but you've got to give them, a lot of credit for yet another strong season and locking in that top 4 finish. Viliami Kikau missed out from last week's game due to injury, but should be back this week. And as for the Sharks, they secured a dominant 40-16 victory over the Newcastle Knights at Shark Stadium, moving into 5th place on the ladder, with their eyes fixed on a potential top 4 finish. Winger Ronaldo Mulitalo was the standout for the Sharks, scoring a hat-trick of tries and running for 182 metres with 7 tackle breaks. Key contributors also came from the bench players like Tom Hazelton, Siosifa Talakai, and Braden Hamlin-Uele, who really turned the game in the Sharks' favour after falling behind early. Cronulla are once again, quiet achievers and ready for yet another finals campaign under Craig Fitzgibbon. Some injury news to be careful of for the Sharks, though, is that Braden Trindle left the field early with an ankle injury and will no doubt be monitored this week. Oregon Kaufusi is also looking to overcome a calf injury. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Sharks, they have won 6 of the past 8 against the Bulldogs. But for me, I think the Doggies get it done at home this week by 1 to 12 points. I think off the back of their defence, the Dogs need a good performance leading into the finals, and in front of what should be a pretty decently sized crowd on Super Saturday. Give me the Bulldogs at home by 1 to 12 points. Alright, moving now to the final 2 Sunday games of the regular season, and we do start with the 9th place Dolphins taking on the 1st placed Canberra Raiders at KO Stadium. Alright, if we do start first with the Dolphins, who secured a high-scoring 36-30 victory over the Gold Coast Titans at Suncorp Stadium, maintaining their slim finals hope with a strong performance driven by early dominance at the start of each half. Their fast starts in both halves were crucial in outpacing the Titans, who struggled to catch up after the Dolphins built early leads in each half. There were multiple stages where it looked like the Finns were going to pull away with it, only to concede easy meters and tries to give the Titans back the momentum. Defense still remains their biggest challenge. Scoring points, not so much. Massive news too is that Herbie Farnworth is a potential in this week, which certainly goes a long way to increasing their already dynamic attack. Also, Kulikefi Fini-Filiaki is also a potential in. And as for the Raiders, they secured a 24-10 victory over the West Tigers at GIO Stadium, clinching their first minor premiership in 35 years in front of a sold-out crowd of over 20,000 fans. Key players included Jamal Fogarty, who set up the first try with a towering kick that Jed Stewart capitalised on, and Corey Horsburgh, who bulldozed his way over through to score another try. Ethan Strange sealed the victory late in the game with a try under the post, converted by Fogarty, ensuring the Raiders secured the top spot for season 2025. Congrats to the Raiders and all their fans on an amazing season. And if anyone is going to win it other than the Warriors, I do hope that you guys are the ones and you go all the way to cap off, a truly remarkable and fairy tale-like season. Big news too is that Ricky Stewart is expected to rest key players this week, so do keep an eye on Teams List Tuesday when they drop later today. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Raiders, they lost their first game against the Dolphins, but have since won 3 straight. However, I do think the Dolphins win this week, given that Ricky is going to rest most of his key players. The Dolphins obviously may be a chance to make the 8 if the Roosters lose earlier in the week. So I'm going to take the Dolphins here 13+. I think regardless, they put on a big show against a relatively inexperienced Raiders side. All right, the final game of the regular season is an absolute dead rubber between the 12th placed Parramatta Eels and the 16th placed Newcastle Knights at CommBank Stadium. Alright, and if we do start first with the Eels, who secured a hard-fought 26-22 upset victory over the Warriors at Go Media Stadium, overcoming the odds against the higher-ranked home side and highlighting their season's revival efforts. Isaiah Iyongi was a standout for the Eels, scoring 2 crucial tries, including a spectacular solo effort where he stepped chance Nickel Clockstad to extend the lead, while Josh Adokar opened the scoring with a vintage 100-metre dash in his 150th game that no doubt energized his side. Again, really good signs for the Eels. I think they'll be really, really strong next season. It's just a shame they had to knock us out of the top 4. And as for the Knights, they started strong against the Sharks, surging to an early 10-0 lead with tries from Fletcher Hunt and a stunning one-handed finish by Greg Marju before eventually caving 40 points to 16. It's really hard to get excited about their future at the moment with their salary cap mess and now a new head coach, but I'm certainly sending all my thoughts and prayers to Newcastle fans and members. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Eels, they have won 7 of the last 8 against the Knights, and I think they make it 8 from the last 9. Give me Parramatta here, 13+. I think the kicking game of Moses will just kick them to death, and the Eels, they're building confidence. I think they really want to cap off their season with a big win, and unfortunately for the Knights, they're a basket case. So, Para 13+, see you later, season 2025. Bang, just like that, we're done. The last full 8-game tipping video of the season. Thank you so much for all the support. I really do appreciate all the comments and messages, the Discord members, all of that good stuff. Again, you guys are the reason I do this. Without the comments, without the engagement, I would have given up by now. So thank you. Looking forward to doing a few more finals videos, but I will see you again next season.